Yes, what's good guys, Ben's here. Welcome back to the studio. In this video we're going to do a little sneaky behind the scenes of my latest tune, Balance. We're going to jump into Studio One. I'm going to break down some of my favourite elements. If you haven't heard it already, don't worry, I'm going to play it soon. If you have already, then get ready to find out all of my secrets behind this track. Let's jump into Studio One.
I can't accept jungle, we need jump up, I'm afraid.
So here it is, my track Balance. Let's give it a quick play and then we're going to dive in and give you a bit more of an overview. I'm going to break down some of the elements. I'm going to try to keep this video around 15-20 minutes, otherwise I could be here for weeks talking about it. But if you have any questions, then just drop them in the comments. But anyway, here's Balance.
Balance, no bass, 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 bass. Balance, no bass, you better be afraid. Balance, no bass, you better be afraid. Balance, no bass, no bass. Balance, no balance.
Yeah, I like it. It's a good track, really fun, quite creative, I think. It's got a big low end to it with nice high synths, and then the vocals got this kind of cybery effect. So I'm going to break them all down in this video. I'll try to cover as much as I can, but yeah, let's get started. So the first thing in this track, as you can see, there is a lot of channels. Let's open up the mixer. It is peppered with channels, and these are actually folders with tracks behind these folders. So when I create my projects and they get complex, I like to make sure there's some form of structure. Even with a structure of the folders I've laid out here, it's still quite messy. So from the top we've got full vocal mix, some random ones for like effects and things. We've got atmospheres in purple, we've got a synth bus, synths in purple, orange we've got our bass bus, and then in the green we've got our drums essentially. So I don't lay them out the same way all the time, but in this particular track it's got kind of some structure to it. I kind of keep my drums at the bottom, bass on top, synths, atmosphere, vocals. So that's kind of like what I'm aiming for, but I may focus on a particular element more so than other tracks. So I maybe have like a chorus or an atmosphere intro. They're all entirely dependent on the track. And if we open up these folders, there's all the vocals again, and folders upon folders, because when you're trying to manage too much music or synths and samples and MIDI, it can get really confusing. So I do like to put some logic behind what I'm doing in my track. So in this track, something that's actually quite interesting is the vocals, and the vocals have a kind of cybery effect to it, and I've used a brand new plugin from Baby Audio called Humanoid, and it kind of give it these sort of like sci-fi effect, and the vocals almost have like a synth layered into it. I thought it was pretty cool, and with this whole track I was kind of going for that like sci-fi synthy vibe. So let's just play this, and what you're hearing or looking for is the kind of like robotic sound with the vocal.
Balance, no bass, you better be afraid. Not hot, no great, you've never been this way. No, we'll never be the same. I know, you're screaming out my name. Give me eyes, give me a break.
I think it's really cool. I know, like, I love sci-fi, so to be able to put these sorts of elements into my track, I just find it really fun. And it just creates these like little weird vocal textures when you play the whole tune. It gives it a quite nice different vibe for in the chorus.
Balance, no bass, you better be afraid. Not hot, no great, you've never been this way. No, we'll never be the same. I know, you're screaming out my name. Give me a
Yeah, so in the mix it just sounds great. Humanoid's a good plugin. It doesn't really have too many applications in my opinion for what I'm doing, but for this particular track it went in really nice. I think the vocals are quite a standout feature of this track. So there's a quick behind the scenes of the vocals, and a plugin I used to get some of that key tonal effect of it. So for me, I think one of the most standout elements of this track was the synth. and it's actually a really simple synth to make, but it's so effective. And essentially it's just a sine wave playing a little bleep, and I've layered on reverb, choruses and different effects and some OTT, and it's created this like really nice little pop with like a big tail to it. So let's just play it quickly so you can hear it without all the other elements in the track. Yeah, it's I like the room on it. It just gives it a kind of really nice character and space to it. But if we were to open up the patch and just look at what's actually generating this sound, it's just one of the basic shapes, a simple sine wave. And using sine waves is really nice to get those kind of plucky synths. It's quite strange because you hear all the elements on their own behind the track and you're like, how can that be good? But it's not until you build up all the elements of the track that the track really starts to become alive. So the synth on its own, yeah, not very impressive, but when you put it all together with the drums and the bass, it just sounds so good. It goes so well. It really complements the low end because it's that really nice plucky dong with the big bass. Let's get on to the bass because that's quite an interesting patch as well. So one of the main features of this track is the sub, and to make that sub I've used Current 2.0, and in Current 2.0 it has a sub oscillator filter section which has basically every control you need to create a sub, including your 808s, just pure sine subs. You can add harmonics to it. It is really good. And what I've done in this patch is all the lower harmonics, I've created a D-tune on it, so it kind of gives the track a bit more of a boom, kind of a bit more of a vibraty sound. So let's quickly play it so you can hear it. Almost got like a guitar, like if you played a really low note on a guitar. And I thought it's quite a cool noise. I think I've got some texture layered on top of it as well, so you can hear a bit of the white noise. I think on its own it sounds really fat and distorted, which it is. That's the point of it, right? It's big heavy 808s with little synths on top of it. But again, when you play all these elements together, they just complement each other so well. Yeah, I really do like this track, like I said. I think next we could take a quick peek at some of the fill basses. I won't go too much detail, but I'll show you some of those patches as well. So they're a bit more of the fun element to it. You've got the big 808 with other synths popping off. So throughout the track, at the end of each of the bass lines, we've got elements that pop off. One of the first elements we've got is an 808, which goes up in pitch, which I process differently, but is essentially using the same patch as the actual original 808 with some slight modifications to it. So at the end of each subline, you get that kind of boom, boom, boom bass line to it. If you hear it all together, it makes sense. It kind of just pops up, boom, 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 boom. And then at the end of that section, we have these re-spaces that pop in, which kind of have a lot of width and weight to them. They're very nice. What do we use here? Let's have a look at sub. We're using Serum for just essentially a plain sub, and then there's a re-space layered on top. So literally just a sound wave for that one, and then the re-space was created in Current. Just using a simple sawtooth, a D-tune sawtooth to get that Reese warp warp kind of bass line, and then transitions into another bass line, so the Reese on its own. And it's literally just making a filter wobble with two sawtooths is really simple, and then some post-processing on top of it, delays and reverbs. and then it goes into that kind of bass. But the two together just fill out just fill out the last part of the track. And then as we move into the next section, I need to get better with my play and starts. There's a slight delay, so I keep pressing play and nothing happens, and then sometimes it does. And then one of the final kind of fill basses is after the 32 bars, the intro bass changes to this bass. I pressed play and it didn't start. That is actually a very nice bass. I really like that. That kind of, and then when you kind of put it all together in the second part of it, kind of sounds like this.
No bass, you better be afraid. Not hot, not great, you've never been afraid. No balance, no bass, you better be afraid.
So there you've got like a different type of vocal in it as well, with another bass element coming in. I think that's kind of it. There's not too much complexity for bass and arrangement patterns. Most of the complexity is coming with the amount of elements working together. So it's the bass lines, the drums, the effects, the vocals, and the synths, and all together it gives it complexity. It's not just the bass line giving this track complexity. Let's have a quick listen to the drums. We'll move on to them, see how they're processed. So in most of my tracks, my drums are actually not too complex, especially in this track. I think with all the other elements, it was better to keep the drums kind of simple, having that sort of standard steppy DnB pattern that we all know and love. So let's quickly just play the drums soloed. Help if you add the snare in. Yeah, so there, as simple as it can get really. You've just got a big fat weighty kick, a nice poppy snare, and a hi-hat. So let's break down a couple of these elements. Oh, and a shuffle. Break down a couple of these elements. I've used addictive drums to create that hat. I like addictive drums for just hats or drums or anything really. It's the closest thing I can get to actually having a live drummer or someone who can pitch up samples from a live instrument. So this is why I like this plugin, and just created a hi-hat from there. Really simple hi-hat. And the nice thing about addictive drums over using a traditional sample is it adds slight variation to the hits, which gives it a bit more of an organic feel, and I actually really like that. Rather than just playing a sample, you're just playing that same repetitive sound. But with this, because it's sampled thousands of drum kits probably and hundreds of times, it gives you slight variations in each hit, so it gives it a bit more organic feel. It's very subtle, but it really does make a difference when you layer lots of organic hits over each other. So for the snare, we're using a clap, and the reason I'm using a clap is there's a lot of sound in the low end, especially with the sub end. I tried a poppy snare, like a really, that traditional DnB snare, but it didn't fit quite right, and the clap sort of sat over the mix a bit nicer, so I went down the clap route. Let me quickly solo that. Got some processing on top of it. This is quite interesting. Shaper box. So without this, you kind of get a really full snare, but I've recreated a clap transient in this, and this is a video, a plugin I will be doing more videos on. So keep an eye out for them, because this plugin is incredible. I'll show you some good use cases for this plugin. And then finally we've got the kick, which again, in my previous tutorial we talked about kick 3. This is using their older version kick 2. Kind of got a breaky style kick layered with another kick, which is just filling out the high end, and I've tuned the kick into the key of the track, so in D minor, and the kick sort of like tails off around that frequency, so when you're playing it with the sub, it doesn't clash with the sub frequency, and you still get a nice heavy kick, but it's not kind of a big blurry mess. So there you have it, a little overview of my latest track, Balance. I hope you enjoyed that. If you have any questions or any of the subjects I didn't cover in this video, then be sure to drop a comment below. If you found this useful, don't forget to like, and if you want more content like this in the future, get subscribed, because I'll be doing more track breakdowns, plug-in reviews, you name it. If you want to check out this tune Balance, I'll leave a link in the description, and I'll catch you in the next video.